Hello, dear friends. You are watching Ruslan Belov's channel, and here is your latest daily briefing on the combat operations on the Ukrainian front. So the negotiation process in the United Arab Emirates, which has been the subject of so much talk, concluded yesterday. The outcome, in essence, was quite predictable. The parties agreed on a prisoner of exchange and, as it is usually phrased, agreed to continue agreeing. In other words, exactly what we discussed beforehand. Regardless of the number of meetings and rounds of negotiations, no progress was achieved on the key fundamental issues. This means only one thing: the hostilities continue as they were. Peace remains as distant and unattainable as ever. One only needs to listen to Volodymyr Zelensky's rhetoric. Just yesterday, he stated once again that the Ukrainian side has no intention of recognizing Donbass as Russian, insists that these territories are Ukrainian, and furthermore announced the approval of a new Security Service of Ukraine (SBU) operation on Russian territory. This raises a logical question. Can we speak of the proximity of peace after such statements? I think the answer is obvious. Combat operations along the front line continue, and as before, we are here to analyze the current situation in detail. First and foremost, an important point must be noted. As you know, the Starlink system has been deactivated for the Russian side along the entire front line. Virtually all units have seen these terminals stop functioning. This has directly affected not only command and communications, but also the flow of information regarding advances and the current situation. As a result, over the past 24 hours, not a single new confirmed update, backed by objective control footage, drone video evidence, has appeared. We are talking not just about a shortage, but a total absence of such materials. Therefore, everything we discuss today regarding the front is based exclusively on information I have received directly from soldiers on the ground. I repeat, there is currently no visual confirmation in the form of video or photographic objective control materials. Moreover, there is a high probability that in the coming days, and perhaps weeks, the situation will remain the same. Significantly less information will be coming through, especially information confirmed by footage. The reason is simple: there are serious communication problems on most sectors of the front. This will undoubtedly affect the pace of advancement, at least in the perspective of the next week or two, until alternative communication channels are established. Consequently, the information landscape will look rather sparse. Now, let's move directly to the situation at the front. I should clarify, I do not have contact with soldiers in all directions, so we will only discuss the sectors for which there is up-to-date information. We begin with the Kupiansk direction. This is essentially the only sector from which any visual materials are currently being received. There is footage here of Russian assault units in action. Regarding the situation in Kupiansk itself, earlier, the Ukrainian side claimed that the Armed Forces of Ukraine, AFU, had supposedly completely driven Russian units out of the central part of the city. However, this information is not true. I am in contact with soldiers holding positions in northern Kupiansk, and according to them, the Russian presence in the central districts remains. This is also confirmed by mapping data. There have been no updates or recoloring of the map in favor of the AFU recently. At the same time, Ukrainian forces on the left bank side are facing serious problems. The main focus now is the attempt to finally push through Kurilovka. We have repeatedly mentioned that for this to happen, it is necessary to take the key fortified area, the Kurilovka 1 micro-district. This is a compact group of 10 high-rise buildings. As we can see, the enemy's room for maneuver there is extremely limited. Furthermore, Ukrainian units are not even attempting to break through toward Kupiansk-Uzlovy. They continue to hold out inside this micro-district, effectively blocked in a small area. This is precisely what is currently preventing the final resolution of the Kurilovka issue. Meanwhile, Petropavlovka is under steady Russian control, despite the fact that the Ukrainian side previously denied this. However, numerous video materials that arrived earlier unequivocally confirmed Russian control over the settlement. At the moment, the task is to eliminate the resulting pocket by advancing between Podoli along the road in a northwestern direction and taking control of Kucherovka. If successful, Russian units will be able to reach the eastern part of Kupiansk on a wide front, which will significantly facilitate further assault operations within the city limits. Of course, the question of the right bank part of the city remains. As I have said before, the main task for the current month, specifically for February, is to simply maintain control over at least the northern part of Kupiansk on the right bank. Even if this control is minimal, its presence is fundamentally important. The main emphasis is on working the flanks to ensure reliable and stable logistics. Once the situation on the left bank finally collapses, following the capture of Kucherovka and the final resolution of the Kurilovka and Kupiansk Uzlovi issues in reality, not just on paper, actions inside Kupiansk itself will become significantly easier. Moving on. Earlier reports indicated that Russian assault units had entered Novokruhlyakivka. However, I have no data on whether they managed to gain a foothold there. The report specifically mentioned an entry, but the current situation around this settlement remains unclear. Overall, this sector looks quite strange. There are effectively only two settlements here, Bohuslavka and Novokruhlyakivka. Russian troops reached Novoplatonovka. Its capture was even announced, yet no confirming objective control footage has appeared. In any case, the front configuration here is extremely inconvenient for the AFU, as their positions are pressed against the river. Nevertheless, the Ukrainian side continues to hold its defense. In the Borova direction, the situation remains completely unchanged. Throughout January, as in the previous month, it has been quiet here, and there are still no movements toward Borova or in the Pershatravnev area. Now, the Lyman sector. What is known at this moment? According to available information, Russian units have approached Korovi Yar. This is not yet reflected on the map, but in time, once objective control confirmation appears, the corresponding changes will likely be noted. Formally, it would even be more logical to attribute this sector to the Borova direction, but from the southern flank. There are indeed some movements here. I am often asked about Svyatogorsk and what is happening there, as there were earlier reports of an entry into the city and advancement within it. However, at the moment, the situation remains unchanged. I have explained before that taking Svyatogorsk by entering from the north or east is practically impossible. The southern bank of the Seversky Donets consists of commanding heights. Yes, you can advance inside the city, but you will be under constant fire. This is exactly what prevented the establishment of full control over Svyatogorsk in 2022. Back then, the part of the city on the northern bank of the river was occupied, but the southern heights were never cleared, which made it impossible to hold the city in full. The situation now is largely identical, until there is progress on the opposite bank, and there is none, as we have no presence there. It is premature to talk about a full-scale storming of Svyatogorsk. As for Lyman, work continues both around the city and inside it. However, there are no full-scale urban assault battles taking place yet. There are periodic incursions. For instance, yesterday information came in about an attempted entry from the southern direction. However, as the soldiers put it was without consolidation. This is standard practice. A reconnaissance in force is carried out, enemy positions are identified, and then the units withdraw. Similar work is being conducted north of the city. Overall, what is happening now is the so-called grunt work on the flanks and around the perimeter of Lyman. Regarding the Rai-Oleksandrivka direction, we broke everything down in detail yesterday. The advance from Zakotny is moving along the heights toward Kriva Luka. No new information has been received from this area over the past 24 hours. I will remind you again, communication problems due to the Starlink shutdown are significantly limiting the flow of data. At the same time, objective control footage appeared yesterday, confirming the capture of Nova Marov. Information had surfaced previously, and mapping resources had already noted the settlement passing under our control. Now, however, video materials have arrived directly from Nova Marov, showing flags raised in different parts of the village, which finally confirms this fact. Simultaneously, fighting continues in the area of the Minkivka-Holubivka fortified node. Ukrainian sources claim that Russian units have entered Holubivka. This is a critical moment, as Minkivka, Holubivka, and Orikovo-Vasilivka formed a single fortified area around which combat operations had essentially been stuck since 2023. For more than 2 years, effectively almost 3 years, fierce battles were fought here with minimal progress. Real success remained elusive for a long time. It is only now, by the spring of 2026, that the situation has begun to change. The Ukrainian defense in this fortified sector has started to crumble. Advances are being made in Minkivka and, according to Ukrainian claims, already in Holubivka. If this node is finally squeezed shut, it will significantly simplify the further offensive, first toward Oleksandrivka and then toward Sloviansk. Now let's move to the Constantinivka direction, which we also analyzed in detail yesterday. Regarding the situation in Stepanivka, there is still no objective control footage available at this time. Consequently, this information must be treated with a degree of caution and, essentially, marked with a question mark. It was formally announced that the settlement had come under the control of Russian forces, but visual confirmation of this has yet to appear. I do not have my own contacts directly in this sector, so it is currently impossible to state with certainty whether Stepanivka is truly under Russian control or not. That said, I have no particular anxiety regarding the southern and western flanks. The situation there looks relatively stable. The northern direction is of much greater concern, as there is currently a lack of any noticeable advancement there. Meanwhile, for the defense of Constantinivka to truly begin to collapse, progress from Chasiv Yar in a westward direction is vital. I am referring to settlements such as Mykolaiivka, Podolske, Stenki, and further to Novodmitrivka, Molocharka, and so on. It is this movement that is necessary to create pressure on the entire northeastern flank of the defense, as well as on the key Druzhkivka-Konstantinivka supply route. Without progress in this sector, unfortunately, we cannot speak of a real collapse of the Konstantinivka defense. The Chasiv Yar direction remains one of the most difficult. Even though the city itself was taken back in July, the line of combat contact has hardly shifted during this time. More than 6 months have passed, yet the front is effectively still in the immediate vicinity of the city, which only highlights the complexity of this sector. Next, the Dobropillia direction. Despite the Starlink shutdown and the general complications with communication, positive news is coming from here. Yesterday, soldiers reported that they managed to enter Kucherov Yar. This event was quite expected. We discussed in advance that movement in this direction was inevitable, as the advance toward this settlement has been underway for a long time. The vector of the offensive here remains the same as it was in the summer. First Kucherov Yar, followed by a further push towards Zoloty Kolodyaz. What can be said in this regard? All the attempts and so-called successes of the AFU that the Ukrainian side actively promoted, such as statements about a Dobropillia counteroffensive and fantasies about allegedly liberated hundreds of square kilometers, which never actually happened, are gradually coming to naught. It should be admitted that they did have certain local successes. However, as of today, those gains are effectively being completely neutralized. If the entry into Kucherov Yar is confirmed, followed by a push to Zoloty Kolodyaz, we can talk about a total zeroing out of all previous AFU achievements in this direction. Furthermore, information arrived yesterday regarding the advance of Russian units along the highway north of Belitzk. It was reported that they managed to reach a certain point, though this is not yet reflected on the map due to a lack of objective control footage. Nevertheless, according to data directly from the troops, the systematic envelopment of Belitzk continues. I previously mentioned that we should expect good news from this direction. Now let's move to Vchansk. In the Vchansk area, combat operations remain extremely fierce, especially in the vicinity of Vovchansky Khutori. Formally, no stable advances are being recorded here. However, over the past 24 hours, reports have come in that Russian units managed to advance approximately 300 meters within this settlement. Similar reports have surfaced here before, and often confirming materials appeared a week later. For instance, from one of the positions, Russian troops previously advanced nearly 1 kilometer. Later, a video appeared from another point, recording an advance of another 1.5 kilometers. Now they are again speaking of a 300-meter advance. Perhaps in a week we will receive confirming materials, or perhaps we won't receive them at all, as the situation in this area is extremely unstable. Territories change hands regularly. Effectively, only ruins remain of Vovchansky Khutori today. Overall, this is all the information I have at the moment. Yes, it is not much, but I warned you from the start that the data flow has significantly decreased due to the deterioration of communications. Russian units are currently seeking and implementing alternative communication methods. Alternatives do exist, of course, but it is not worth disclosing the details. It all comes down to the speed of full-scale implementation. That is all I have for today.